Today's maritime strike exercise was undoubtedly the highlight of Balikatan 2024 as the AFP and U.S. Navy participants and their air, naval, and ground assets.
16,700 troops. No, that's not the crowd size for a Taylor Swift concert in Manila. It's the number of American and Filipino forces now flexing their muscles in waters China swears belong to them. And no, they're not there for a pool party. This is Balikatan 2024, and it just might be the boldest military exercise the South China Sea has ever seen. Every year, the US and the Philippines link arms for what they call Balikatan, which literally means shoulder to shoulder. Sounds wholesome, right? Like a buddy movie starring Tom Cruise and Manny Pacquiao. But this year's Balikatan, forget buddy comedy. This one looks more like a Marvel crossover event, except with warships, missiles, and a lot less CGI. This is officially the largest Balikatan exercise ever. Over 11,000 American soldiers and 5,000 Filipino troops are teaming up. That's 16,700 people in uniform. Plus, for the first time, Australia's Defence Force and the French Navy are tagging along. Yes, you heard right. The French Navy. Baguettes, berets, and battleships. And as if that wasn't enough, 14 other countries showed up as observers. ASEAN, the G7, the EU, India, New Zealand, South Korea. Basically, if this were a Facebook event, the RSVP list would look like the guest list at the UN. But hey, it's not just about how many show up to the party. It's where the party happens. And this year, they didn't pick some safe, cozy training ground. Nope. They're drilling in open waters beyond the Philippines' 12 nautical mile territorial line. Translation: they're operating in Manila's exclusive economic zone. Waters that China loudly claims as their own. Imagine two roommates fighting over the last slice of pizza. Except, the slice is the South China Sea, and both roommates brought aircraft carriers to the kitchen. So what are they actually doing out there? No, it's not just suntanning on the decks of destroyers. We're talking live-fire island takeovers, rocket launchers, drones, air defense, missile strikes, cyber defense, and even information warfare. Basically, if it can be weaponized, they're practicing it. At one point, troops will storm beaches, secure islands, and fire missiles at an old ship until it sinks. Your paintball weekend suddenly looks like child's play, doesn't it? And just when you think this is all about muscle flexing, the US decided to add a little spice to the stew. They brought in their mid-range missile system for the first time ever in the Philippines. This bad boy can hit targets 2,500 kilometers away. That covers Taiwan, the Luzon Strait, South China Sea bases, and yes, chunks of the Chinese coast itself. Imagine showing up to a fistfight and your buddy casually drops a rocket launcher on the table. That's the vibe. But the story doesn't stop at firepower. Because behind the warships, behind the missiles, and behind the beach landings is a very clear message. And in the next part of this story, we're diving into exactly what that message is, and why Beijing definitely isn't laughing. See, Balikatan isn't just a gym day for soldiers. It's a geopolitical mic drop. The Philippines and the US are basically telling Beijing, we see you building runways on reefs, but guess what? We've got friends, missiles, and a schedule packed with live fire drills. This year marks the first time these exercises are staged this close to Taiwan and smack in disputed waters. That's not an accident. That's a signal flare. And China? Oh, they're definitely watching. And by watching, I mean probably clutching their teacups hard enough to crack porcelain. Because these drills overlap with Beijing's self-claimed backyard, and nothing makes them twitch like joint forces practicing amphibious assaults right on their imaginary property line. But here's where it gets juicier. The lineup isn't just Americans and Filipinos. Australia's in, France is sailing by, and 14 other countries are on the sidelines taking notes. It's basically a military Coachella. Except instead of flower crowns, you've got helmets. And instead of Bass's drops, you've got missile strikes. The message is crystal clear. The Philippines isn't standing alone. They've got a squad, and it's stacked. And while soldiers are busy firing rockets at decommissioned ships, engineers and medics are out there doing humanitarian projects. Building schools, fixing infrastructure, and giving medical training. It's a clever PR play. Think of it as flexing hard power while sprinkling in soft power. Like saying, yes, we can sink ships, but we can also build your community clinic. The contrast is powerful and strategic. Now, let's talk toys, because America didn't just send troops, it sent hardware. That mid-range missile system we mentioned earlier. Yeah, that's not just for show. It's basically a land-based version of the Navy's vertical launch system. And it's capable of firing Tomahawk cruise missiles and SM-6 interceptors. Translation: it can hit far, it can hit fast, and it can hit hard. China knows it. Taiwan knows it. Everybody in the neighborhood knows it. And if you think it stops at missiles, think again. Balikatan drills also include cyber warfare simulations, because in modern conflict, it's not just about who has the biggest guns. It's about who controls the information. The US and the Philippines even ran a week-long information warfare exercise. Imagine hackers in fatigues, running war games not just on land and sea, but across fiber optic cables. Because in today's battle space, the keyboard is just as deadly as the Kalashnikov. So why does this matter? Because the Philippines sits in the first island chain. Basically the speed bump that stands between China's Navy and the Pacific Ocean. If you want to keep China bottled up, you need the Philippines on your side. And these drills, they're about proving that if Beijing makes a move, Uncle Sam and company aren't just watching from the sidelines. They're already on the field. And this leads us to the big question: is this just training, or is it preparation for something bigger? Because when 16,700 troops practice retaking islands in waters, China claims, the line between exercise and warning shot gets pretty blurry. Here's the thing, none of this is happening in a vacuum. The backbone holding this whole show together is the US-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty, signed way back in 1951. That's older than color TV. For over 70 years, it's been the insurance policy that says, if you get punched, I get punched too. And right now, that clause matters more than ever, because the Philippines has found itself nose-to-nose with China on a regular basis in the South China Sea. Think about it. Chinese ships are swarming reefs, blocking Filipino resupply missions, and even firing water cannons at Philippine Coast Guard vessels. It's like living next to a neighbor who not only parks in your driveway, but also tries to build a garage there. And the Philippines, they finally said, okay, enough. Let's call Big Brother. Enter the US, stage left, with warships, fighter jets, and missiles that can reach Beijing's front yard. And this treaty isn't some dusty relic. It's evolved. In 1998, they signed the Visiting Forces Agreement, giving US troops legal cover to hang around. Then, in 2014, they dropped the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA, which basically turned the Philippines into a rotating Airbnb for American forces. More bases, more access, more firepower. And guess what? 3 of those new EDCA sites are being used in Balikatan right now. That's like finally unlocking all the DLC maps in Call of Duty. Why does Washington care so much? Easy. Geography. The Philippines sits right at the edge of the South China Sea, a maritime superhighway worth an eye-popping $6 trillion in annual trade. That's 1/3 of global shipping, flowing through waters Beijing would love to call its private pool. Whoever controls this region doesn't just control trade routes, they control leverage over the global economy. So yeah, it's worth fighting over, and let's not forget Taiwan. The Philippines' northern islands are basically right across the street. We're talking just 200 kilometers from Taiwan's southern tip. That means any conflict in Taiwan automatically drags Manila into the spotlight. If China ever rolls the dice on an invasion, US forces in the Philippines become the closest cavalry. And Balikatan? It's a dress rehearsal for that nightmare scenario. Now here's the spicy part. China absolutely hates this. Their official line that these drills increase tension and insecurity in the region, which is diplomats speak for, stop practicing war games in my claimed waters. It's embarrassing. But from the Philippines' point of view, insecurity is already sky high, thanks to Beijing's aggressive behavior. So the response is, don't like it? Too bad. We're training anyway. And if you're wondering whether this is just saber rattling, let's be clear, these aren't symbolic push-ups. These are island recapture drills, long-range missile tests, cyber warfare simulations, and full-scale amphibious landings. In other words, Balikatan is no longer just about camaraderie and photo ops. It's a playbook for what might actually happen if the South China Sea boils over. So, with the Philippines and the US standing shoulder to shoulder and a chorus of allies humming backup, the question becomes, how far is Beijing willing to push back? Because the more this alliance flexes, the more it forces China to decide whether to play nice or double down. Here's the kicker. Balikatan doesn't just strengthen military muscles, it strengthens political ones. It tells the world, this isn't just a Philippines problem, it's everyone's problem. Because if China locks down the South China Sea, it's not just Filipino fishermen who lose out. It's global trade, freedom of navigation, and the balance of power across the Indo-Pacific. And let's be real, China's been playing the long game, stacking artificial islands like Lego sets and building runways where fish used to swim. But these drills, they're a reminder that the US and its allies can play the long game too. The Philippines isn't just a pawn on the board. It's squarely on the front line of the chess match between Washington and Beijing. So what happens if things go from practice to the real thing? If Beijing decides to test the waters, literally, would America actually show up guns blazing? Balikatan is designed to erase that doubt by training together, sharing intel, and literally putting troops shoulder to shoulder. Both sides are saying, if you mess with one, you mess with all both. And with Australia, France, and a dozen other nations watching closely, it's like telling China, don't even think about it. We've got receipts and witnesses. And while all this sounds like a Tom Clancy novel coming to life, let's not forget the human side. Soldiers on the ground, sailors at sea, pilots in the sky. They're not just practicing for the headlines. They're preparing for the unthinkable. For every missile test and beach landing, there's also a kid somewhere in Luzon or Palawan whose future hangs on whether or not this training keeps the peace. Balikatan might look like pure firepower, but at its core, it's about deterrence. It's about making conflict so costly, nobody wants to roll the dice in the first place. So, what's the takeaway? The South China Sea is more than just contested waters. It's the stage for the next great power showdown. The Philippines and the US just lit up that stage with the biggest, boldest Balikatan ever. And the message couldn't be louder. The alliance is alive, armed, and ready. Now the spotlight shifts to Beijing. Will they step back or will they step up? That's the billion-dollar, or should I say, trillion-dollar question. If you made it this far, you clearly know the stakes. So let's hear your take. Do you think Balikatan is enough to keep Beijing in check? Or are we just buying time before the real showdown begins? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you learned something new, and don't forget to subscribe. Because trust me, this story is only heating up, and you won't want to miss what comes next.